was feeling like I could continue doing what I'm doing. I could continue being overweight and limit my content, limit my life to what it is now and just keep going what it is now. But I could also try and overcome that, try and do something about it. When I'm 50, I don't want to look back at my 20s and feel like I regret what I've done there, feel like I didn't get the best out of myself. And that mindset is really what changed it for me. I basically started riding on Zwift almost every single day for 6 months. Then I started having more busy periods when it comes to work. Instead of staying the way I was, I chose the hard way and actually did something about it.
Benji Naesen is a Belgian YouTuber who makes videos about gaming, cycling, and his fitness journey. He's also the co-host of the Lanterne Rouge cycling podcast, one of the most popular pro cycling podcasts in the world. Benji went from streaming and creating content about the video game Pro Cycling Manager to working as an analyst for the Tour de France winning Jumbo-Visma cycling team. We talk about Benji's experience living more than half of his life in a public online way as a creator, the sacrifices he's had to make to do it, why he walked away from the Jumbo-Visma gig, and challenging parts of his journey that you may not have seen on his YouTube channel. Whether you love the Tour de France and Tom Boonen, or you've never heard the name Remco Evenepoel, Benji has an overflowing wisdom bank, and this episode is full of gems. As you might know, I also co-host the Beyond the Peloton podcast with Spencer Martin, who joins me to co-host this interview. A heads up that there is a second part of this interview focused exclusively on pro cycling that's available now on Beyond the Peloton. You can find Spencer on Twitter at BTP Cycling and Beyond the Peloton everywhere you listen. You can find Benji and links to his channels on Twitter at Benji Naesen and find the Lanterne Rouge cycling podcast everywhere you listen. As always, I've included those links in the show notes. If you're new to this show, thank you for listening, and please like, subscribe, hit 5 stars, and leave a positive review wherever you listen. Choose the Hard Way is a podcast where guests share stories about how hard things build stronger humans. I'm Andrew Vance, and I've spent more than 25 years telling and shaping the stories of the world's top performers, brands, and businesses. I've held executive and senior leadership roles at the social network for athletes Strava and the human performance company TRX. My byline as a journalist has appeared in dozens of outlets, including Rolling Stone, Outside Magazine, the Los Angeles Times, and many more. Today, I advise and consult with businesses and nonprofits on high-impact storytelling strategies, and I coach leaders to become high-performance communicators. If you'd like to work with me, reach out on LinkedIn or send an email to choosethehardway@gmail.com. I'm now considering sponsorship from mission-aligned brands to support this show in 2023 and beyond. If that's you, reach out. Sign up for the newsletter at choosethehardway.com to get stories from throughout my career, a behind-the-scenes look at what you hear on the podcast, episode updates, and more. If you'd like to suggest a guest or say hello, you can DM me at HardwayPod on social or send an email to choosethehardway@gmail.com.
I was born in 1997. I'm now 25. And yeah, my mom came home with a magazine with PCM 2005, I think, attached to it. I had already seen it once before because I was playing football at that time as a hobby in competitively at that age. Let's not pretend it's too high up either. I was one of the best footballers of that day. No, I ended up, I think, seeing that game from the son of one of the coaches there that was driving me to the actual football pitch. And after that, I was like, oh, cool game. And then my mom came home with that magazine and I was like, oh, the addiction has started. And ever since, it kind of started going up and going up. Because as a kid, it was kind of, I know about Tom Boonen. I know about the Gilberts of the world, which Gilbert hadn't really broken through that much yet at that time. It was more Tom Boonen that was really at the height of his idol. He was an idol in Belgium, in Flanders. And that game made me usually play with the riders that I knew, and gradually made me know more about other riders that existed and other teams that existed. And I started watching more and more races outside of just the Ronde van Vlaanderen and Paris-Roubaix Tour de France, the genre of racing. And by the time it's 2010, I was watching most of the races. But I'd say that 2014 is when I went into crazy mode and started watching the 2.1 races, the 1.1 races next to all the top races as well. So it took time. It was a gradual approach, but I'm addicted and I can't get away from it anymore.
Was the game at that? So you got the game on CD-ROM. What were you doing? Going into AOL chat rooms to learn more about how to play the game?
Nah, I'm actually a single player person in that game most of the time, and I started my career mode on it. I think back in the day I loved to play with like Lotto, eventually also with McCune and so forth in the late 2000s, and I gradually got to know more and more people in it. And afterwards, I think when I started my YouTube channel about Pro Cycling Manager in 2015, there was already a Skype group which I was in, which had quite a few active people that were like, oh, playing PCM all the time. So I fit right in. And eventually I ended up making, together with a few others from that Skype group, a Discord server because Skype was limited to like 20 people. So every single time, and this is bad, this is horrible. I feel like a horrible person now, but every time you had a new friend, you had to ditch one of your old friends to make sure that he would fit in those 20 people in the chat group on Skype, which is horrible. But a Discord didn't have that limit, so we started growing, and I think we made one of the biggest PCM communities, if not the biggest, which was PCM World, which I left about 3 years ago because it became a bit too toxic to my taste. But I feel like there's still a lot of great people in there, and I'd love to catch up with a few people in there. But hey, that's how communities are started when it comes to games, I guess.
And when you got...
I was just for like the one or two people listening who don't know what Pro Cycling Manager is. Obviously, this is one of the more popular. I'm kidding. I mean, I don't think I've ever played it, and like I can't imagine anyone more into pro cycling than myself. But just explain it to us for a second. Are you like putting a team together and then you're watching the races, or are you like actually pedaling the bike in the game? How is this working?
So it's a PC game. There's also a PlayStation and Xbox game these days that is separate from that, but the PC game is where it started for me. And you jump into that, you can choose between just controlling a team in a race. You can select existing teams, or you can also do a career mode, which is basically you go through seasons with an existing team, or you can make a custom team of riders with a certain budget, which is also kind of fun if you want to try and put Pogacar and Roglic in the same team, for example, in a custom team that's available. And then you have to go through the races. You're not actually on your bike, by the way. You're just controlling with keyboard and mouse. And yeah, you basically have to try and get as many victories as possible. You're not actually like, it's not like FIFA where you control the rider directly, where you say to the left, to the right. On Pro Cycling Manager, that's possible, but it's more the management type of the game that's more important, if that makes sense.
Got it. So, Benji, if I'm doing my math correctly, you were about 11 years old, I think, or 10 or 11 years old when Tom Bonin wrecked his Lamborghini going, I think, like 200 miles an hour, possibly high on cocaine. Do you remember that happening, and how did your parents explain that to you?
Well, I think we just made a lot of jokes about cocaine during that period. I think outside of that, it was just the humor behind it. There was nothing too serious about it. I do feel like Tom Bonin had a bit of an evolution in the media where he was so much in the media during his top days that the second it started going a bit sideways in his career, that he got so much criticism. And it started moving towards the moment where if I talk to my grandma right now, she's like, oh, Tom Bonin, he always has to be the center of attention on TV and so forth. But in reality, it's just because media cover those people so much because they were at the height of their prowess at that time. And I think, I don't know, it wasn't explained significantly. I just knew that it happened, and I still enjoyed the cycling, to be fair.
When did you get into writing code and doing development?
Ooh, I think my dad was a journalist back in the day. He still does it relatively quite a bit, but his journalism kind of moved away from doing it for an existing firm in Belgium to having his own journalist website. And I saw him writing the code of that website, and I was like, that sounds pretty cool. And then at school, I realized that I'm shit at French, and that I'm shit at German, and that I'm terrible at chemistry. And then I found the exact study that didn't have all three of those, which was basically going into coding. So part of the reason that I went into coding is because I was terrible at chemistry.
And then what kind of development or coding did you do during your career, and how long did you do it for?
So initially it was website development that I was into, which was basically at first when I was like 13, 14, 12, maybe, I don't know, that age, probably 14, 13, I was looking into YouTube tutorials on how to write HTML, CSS, and basic JavaScript. So your basic web development, websites making, and so forth. And I think that gradually grew throughout the years to the point that when I started doing the study, I realized I wasn't a good coder, which is not a good thing if you want to be a good coder and actually work in this space. So I was the kind of person that didn't study a lot. But if I did study, I would be able to do it. So I used 1 week of my time to study for like 7 days straight how to code, every bloody tutorial I found on like the theory of it, because that was where I was lacking. I could write code because that's basically looking up on the internet what the specific code is that I need and just writing it over. But the theory behind it is what I was missing. And it took me a bit to get the hang of that. But then I got actually suddenly really good at it because I actually put time into figuring out the theory behind the scenes. Because that's the thing that a lot of people, I think, don't get when it comes to coding, is that the basics of coding is the most important, because once you get the hang of how a certain language, a programming language is made, what the certain parts are of that programming language, and what the manners are in which you program certain things, then switching a language from one programming language to the other is not overly difficult. There are some different principles, but the basics stay the same. So once you get those basics, it's relatively straightforward. So I don't know. Eventually, I ended up actually following proper studies that went into proper coding, and I eventually had an internship at a company in Belgium called Studio Hyperdrive, where I was a JavaScript developer, full stack JavaScript developer, and that was both web development and mobile development. And I did that with my YouTube channel about Pro Cycling Manager on the side.
And at what point did the Pro Cycling Manager notoriety become noticeable to you, I guess?
Ooh, that's a difficult one, because like I'm the kind of kid that had multiple YouTube channels as a kid, that most of which failed.
Can you say more, just to hit pause there, can you say more about what did you try before the Pro Cycling Manager stuff started to get some traction?
I had a channel about Minecraft for a second, which crazy stuff. Well, it wasn't a long time, because at the time I was still having like a squeaky voice on YouTube, which I'm glad it's not findable on YouTube anymore. There's not a single clip on there, and I love it.
Those would be worth a lot of money if someone could find those vintage Benjis. Oh man,
make an NFT.
Actually, if I have to be honest, there's I think one multiplayer video where I'm in the background with my voice as like a child. So the squeaky voice is still there somewhere in one spot. So if anybody finds it, well, congrats, because it's really difficult to find. But next to that, I had a channel about a game, best game of all time, not Pro Cycling Manager, Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle-earth, which was like a strategy game about Lord of the Rings. Loved it. And I had this YouTube channel without commentary where I just did speedruns of the game as fast as possible, try and get through it. And there were videos which hit 20, 25K views, but then my YouTube channel got deleted because I used a 6-second clip of Nibali crossing the line on a Tour de France stage, and that was apparently not happy by Amaury Sports organization, which I shouldn't have done that, but I was a kid, so I didn't realize it. And that channel was gone, and then I had a bit of a depressed period of like, oh, my channel's gone. And then I restarted Benji, my PCM channel in 2015.
Logged in one day, and the video, it's not like the video was taken down. Your channel was just gone from that clip.
Yeah. There's been a whole evolution of like how copyright stuff happened on YouTube, and now there's like a strike system where you have to get multiple strikes for your channel to be deleted and so forth. But back in the day, I only needed one, I was gone. So this was like the 2014, 2013 periods, or 2012, whatever. So really early on, and yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was good because then I could focus on my studies a bit, and afterwards I went more into the PCM type of content for my next channel then.
And so how are you balancing making the Pro Cycling Manager content, playing the game, which I'm assuming you had to put a lot of time into to continue to excel at it, and then your studies and beginning a career?
Well, I'd say that I was still the kind of person that didn't study a lot and probably should have studied a bit more, because I had those periods where I didn't study throughout the year, but then when it comes to exam starting, I had every single hour of my day focused on studying. Otherwise, I wouldn't make it. But throughout the year, I did find time to do so because all my free time was pretty much going into the gaming and creating content from gaming, to the point that I probably wouldn't be playing a game if I couldn't make content from it, which is maybe a weird thing to say, because I kind of had the idea of like, what's the point in playing this game if I can't share my experience in it, which is a weird mindset to have. And let's say with Pro Cycling Manager, back in the day, I probably spent an hour and a half on a video, which was not a lot of time for a video, which is low effort when it started, because I was like, oh, this is just recording and then you put it online. But no, then I started editing my videos and figuring out what people wanted to see and how they wanted to see it. And I'd say that evolved throughout the period that now I would be spending, I think, at least 7 to 9 hours per Pro Cycling Manager video now, because 3 or 4 hours of recording, then 2 hours of editing, then half an hour of re-editing it to make sure that it's really fast-paced, no pauses where people could be like, oh, let's turn it off, it's a bit boring. Got to try and make sure that people watch as long as possible. And yeah, that has worked, which is good.
And you talked briefly about some of the toxicity within the Discord server, I think. Yeah. And of course, you mentioned you had your channel one of your channels get deleted at one point. Living a life in such a public way from such a young age, were there other things that had an impact on your identity, or where you ran into situations that were emotionally challenging?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I wasn't the most fit guy. As in, when I was a real child, I was super fit. I played football and so forth. But after that, when I was about, I don't know what age I was. I think I was about 13 or something. But my dad had a medical issue to the point that he was 2 months in coma, which it was because of like a medical mistake. But I'm not going to go too in depth into it. They like did the wrong procedure or something because they thought it was a completely different thing than it was. I don't know if it's an honest mistake or not, or how that works. But anyway, my dad was in coma for 2 months, and I kind of like fell into this pattern of not going outside anymore, playing video games until the late night, and I basically became overweight throughout that period. And while my dad, after those 2 months, got back, he recovered. He woke up from his coma after 2 months, which is still a miracle to this day. I'm really happy that happened. It was the best day of my life that he woke up there, but it was also not necessarily the best thing for my own life, because, well, that he woke up was good, but that period wasn't great for me because it had dropped me into like a lifestyle that's unhealthy. And I never really got out of that until like 2 or 1.5 years ago, which it doesn't really limit you that much in your personal life. You still have your friends. I wasn't necessarily getting bullied at school because of it and so forth, but I started noticing that it was limiting me when it comes to my self-confidence, when it comes to the stuff I do online and so forth. As in, I hadn't shown my face on YouTube until 2 years ago. I wasn't that into, a lot of stuff when it comes to me in person. And I've noticed that limited me. And eventually I decided on November 23rd, which was my birthday, on 2021, to actually do something about it. And that was a very good decision. I can certainly tell you that.
I listened to your like year-end Lanterne Rouge podcast episode. You were saying that you were like couldn't sleep the night before your guys' first YouTube episode, or the episode you recorded, because you were so insecure about just people seeing you on camera. I definitely know that. I know the feeling you're describing, but that's pretty amazing that you've gone from that just in 2021, and then now you're kind of like a Belgian TV star. Like you're on terrestrial television in Belgium. I mean, that's Benji, that's an amazing journey and jump that you've made since then.
I'll be honest, I'm proud of my character development, if I can call it that. It's kind of like a character in a TV show that found his way out of his shell, is in the sense that it's true. When we switched to video podcasts, which was at the start of 2021, we switched to video podcasts. And that was a big step for me. Like, it wasn't just 1 day of not sleeping. It was like 3 days of barely sleeping before that episode came out. And I'd go as far as saying that in that first podcast, if you look really closely, and this will sound really lame, but I swear I kept the exact same posture in front of the camera because I felt like it made me look the thinnest on camera that day, which is crazy to think about in hindsight. And it's throughout the year after that I gained a lot of confidence, because people don't care. People don't care what you look like on a podcast, whether they just want to hear what you have to say. And that's the beauty of it. People are really supportive online, despite the opposite being shown sometimes. And I'd say that kept increasing throughout the last couple of years, to the point that now I don't really care anymore. I don't really care if someone says something, like if someone says something about my weight or something on a video. Also, because of the fact that I've lost 20 kilos in 2022, that's a major confidence boost as well, because I know I have control of it. I think that's a major thing there. And because of that, whenever someone's criticizing my weight or something, I'm like, well, I did something about it. I'm still doing something about it. I really don't care about your opinion on it. And the only feedback that I truly care about is the feedback that I know is right. Let's say I love constructive feedback on the podcast and so forth, because that can make stuff better on content as well. That can make stuff better. The kind of ignorant feedback that's like, I don't care what you post, that's not really constructive. You can't do much with that. But the feedback that hurts the most is, for example, when someone says, I had this comment at the start of, I think it was in the middle of 2022 somewhere, where 2022 was the year that I went full-time into content creatorship in January. And I had this one comment that says, halfway through the year, on my personal YouTube channel, where I uploaded Pro Cycling Manager videos, but didn't upload that much because the podcast became the main thing. And that comment was, I'm kind of disappointed in the amount of content you've been able to produce having gone full-time. And that really hurt, because I don't know, I felt like I could have maybe done more, but on the other end, the podcast is the most important part of what I do. So it was a bit painful to see that comment, because like, maybe I could have done something about that.
Yeah, no, I've it's always the stuff that's nagging you in the back of your head, and you're like, maybe I should be putting out more YouTube content. And then the words kind of, or it's like, oh man, you're destroying me with your passive kind of criticism.
So Benji, what was going on when you made this decision that you wanted to lose weight, number one, and number two, you also made this switch in your career around the same time. So what happened? Why did you make that decision, and why was that the moment to do it?
Well, I'm going to use the name of this podcast in this segment to make you feel better. But let's say that at that time, I was feeling like I could continue doing what I'm doing. I could continue being overweight and limit my content, limit my life to what it is now, and just keep going what it is now. But I could also try and overcome that, try and do something about it. I was in my mind with the sentence of like, when I'm 50, I don't want to look back at my 20s and feel like I regret what I've done there, feel like I didn't get the best out of myself. And that mindset is really what changed it for me. And there's some people that helped out with that. There's a YouTuber called Matt Lane Fitness, which is a friend of mine, that really helped me out with the mindset of getting into actually changing something about my fitness and working on that. And I basically started riding on Zwift every single day for like almost every single day for 6 months, which did a lot. And then I started having more busy periods when it comes to work. And yeah, basically you could say that instead of staying the way I was, I chose the hard way and actually did something about it.
I mean, your life was I'm a super fan of the Lanterne Rouge podcast, so I know everything about Benji's life. But I remember in the early days when you were still working full time as a developer and doing the podcast, you were saying like you finished work at like 12:30 a.m. and you had done so little exercise that day. You like walked circles around your living room just to get your step count in. I mean, that's an intense schedule you were keeping. Like, I can't imagine trying to stay fit while working. You're probably working from like 6, 7 in the morning to midnight. And that's a hard grind.
I almost forgot about that. Like, there were days like 2021 was probably the most brutal year of my life in the sense of like being busy, because the podcast became prominent throughout that year. And I still was working a full-time job as a developer throughout that. But I had in the back of my mind that I was going to eventually have to go either part-time or jump completely into the cycling thing. And halfway through the year, I told my work, well, I'm probably going to be leaving soon. And I told them, I'll give you guys until the end of the year to finish my projects, but then I need to go. that's kind of what, and they were super supportive. Studio Hyperdrive, best company I've worked at. Then again, only company I've worked at. And I swear my day looked intense, as in some days I was sleeping 5 hours, 4 hours, which is probably not healthy, but I knew that it was for the better. I knew that if I struggled a bit during that period, it would all pay off in the end. And I think it did. I do think it had like consequences on my health for a bit during that period. I was getting more sick towards the end of that year. I had a few hospital appointments throughout the end of that year and some health scares, and in the end, nothing serious, so no worries about that. But just the stress that came with that was pretty severe. But yeah, in the end, I ended up going full-time in January 2022, which was in hindsight a very good decision. And I made sure before that moment that I was already financially secure to do so to make sure that stress didn't follow me throughout the other year.
And Benji, once you made that decision that you were going to lose weight, that you were going to become more fit, and that you were going to transform your health, I think a lot of people have the intention to do that. They have that insight, and then it falls apart for a lot of people. Have you had moments when it's been hard to stick to that commitment, or has it been relatively smooth sailing for you?
I'd say that I'm always pretending that I instantly changed my mind in November 2021 and it all started going gloriously. Nah, it's more that I tried it multiple times before that moment. The year before, the same year, 2 years before that, 3 years before that. Every year I'd be like, come on, I need to do something about it. But I feel that it changed for me once I entered into 2022, where I had more time available, where I could spend that time both on sleeping a bit more, both on working on my health, and both on creating other content, where I basically feel like time allowed me to do it. I feel like time is something that is completely underestimated, because a lot of people have long work hours. A lot of people have work hours that are throughout the day, and working out in the evening after work is not that fun either. Having to do it before work, not that much fun either. A lot of people have children they need to take care of, like Spencer Boy here. And I think underestimated is the value of time in your life, because I had the time, I was like, might as well spend some of that time getting myself better without necessarily the opportunity cost of other things in my life, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, completely. Another question that I have, I'm thinking about the decade that I spent as a journalist, and part of what I would do almost all the time, whatever experience I was having, I was always thinking about, could this become a story? Could I transform or sell what I'm experiencing and turn it into a story or if I was curious about something, can I get somebody pay me money to go do this thing that I'm curious about? And given that you're producing so much content and it's about things you care deeply about, I'm curious, how do you go through your day-to-day, and are you ever able to turn that off? And how does making content about the things you love the most and your own transformation just inform your experience of life day-to-day?
It's very difficult, as in I'm the kind of person that I'm a content creator at heart, to the point that everything I do, I try to make content of, which is sometimes a pretty unhealthy lifestyle. Because everything that happens, I'm like, how could I make content of this? Oh, I'm cooking something. How could I make like a small cooking show of Benji tries to cook something, or like a cooking challenge against another PCM YouTuber? That was an actual idea on the table at some point in 2022. So there's so much like small ideas, but I feel like the most important part is that I keep the essence of what I'm doing completely quality. And I'm the kind of person that starts a lot of like side quests and never really finishes those side quests. So I've tried to like make sure that I focus on the main quests that I'm doing, and leave those side quests, either start them and see if the first thing is fun before uploading it. And if it's not that fun, then ditch the entire idea. But also, I think when it comes to my life, I try to divide it now into, when it comes to like my personal life with my girlfriend and stuff, I try to keep that somewhat out of content, if that makes sense. While I don't really have that much in my life outside of cycling, and my personal life outside of that. It's not like I've got major hobbies like, I don't know, I don't go surfing every now and then. not happening. It's also cycling, my sporting hobby. So it's kind of all the same. And I did have a bit of struggles when it comes to confidence, like I said, when it comes to being overweight and so forth. And that caused me to not create content about my first year of weight loss, because I've lost 20 kilos in 2022, but I didn't make content of that because I wasn't proud of how I looked on camera, of how the way I was on camera and so forth. So it really came to the point that now at the end of 2022, going into 2023, these are the moments where I found that confidence that I do feel like I'm proud of what I've done in 2022, and that I can make a next step as well. And I follow that with content, because I uploaded a video about my first FTP test. There's other ideas on the table. I've got an extremely long roadmap of videos planned for the next year based on a monthly upload schedule, because the podcast is still super important and will remain that way. So it's kind of, I want to just make quality YouTube content as I can next to the podcast and see that channel grow as well.
Benji, I have so many questions about what you just shared. I would love to get into some of the mechanics of what it takes to put out the volume of content that you're creating, and also how you're thinking about the future. I'm sure that there are certain aspects of strategic planning that you just can't give away. But what is a day like for you? What parts of this process are you personally working on, and what's your vision for what you want to do over time?
I'd say that, well, it depends on what kind of day, because there's days that I need to be at races. There's days where I basically sit at home and focus on content mainly. But I think it also depends on which day it is, because sometimes I'm working on PCM content. Sometimes I'm working on actual cycling content. Sometimes we're working on podcast content. But let's say we upload about 200 podcasts a year. So most of my days include at least a podcast recording, which is basically directly after the race ends. We watch the race, we make sure we take notes and know what we're talking about. And then afterwards, directly after the race ends, me and Patrick jump on an audio recording website thing that we basically start recording our podcast. And that takes about 45 minutes to an hour, sometimes half an hour if it's like a sprint stage in a UAE tour or something. But then it goes to the editor, because in like year one, we basically shared editing, Patrick and myself, where we both did half the editing throughout the year, dependent on whether it fit best with me when it comes to work during that period, or whether it fit with his time zones and so forth. It all depended on that. It has now moved in towards the factor that we've got someone that does the editing for us. Patrick's wife does a lot of work behind the scenes and really should deserve loads of credit for what happens in LRCP as well, because she does quite a bit of editing as well, if not all editing when it comes to the podcast these days. So major shout out there. And I feel like, I don't know, I just completely lost the question.
No, I think you're answering a lot of the question. Follow up about that. Now that Patrick's wife is editing the video, that probably helps accelerate your production velocity. What platform are you doing the work on, like the editing work?
When it comes to the editing work, Final Cut Pro is the one we edit with. We record stuff on, I think, Zencaster. I know you guys use Riverside. I don't really know what the major differences are. It looks pretty much similar to me. We've had some issues with Zencaster a few times around, but if we have one issue in a year, I think we can be pretty happy with the software that we're working with. And there's other things in the planning, as in we are testing out whether we can do live streams of podcasts, for example, directly after the race, so that we kind of save time when it comes to the editing as well. Because we'd have like a person that's producing the live stream and like switching the visuals on screen, but also that would be up directly after the race instead of 2 hours after the race or 2 hours and a half after the race. So would be a major step forward. And there's plenty of other things that could change to increase the velocity of the content we make. And maybe there's also things we can do during the race when it comes to content, and expansions of more when we are together, make more content about Patrick and myself doing stuff throughout the year, because there's some moments throughout the year where we're going to be together. And during those moments, it's good to make some content together, because I feel like a lot of people care about what we say about cycling, but they also care about what we do outside of that. Just having fun on video. Like you spoke about Average Rob as a YouTuber earlier. Great YouTuber. And like I spoke to Rob a few times throughout 2022, great guy as well. But I feel like Patrick and myself, we can also do like cycling challenges on YouTube and so forth and stuff like that in the future. So there's some fun shit there. Like we're both not great cyclists, but we could probably still buy our way into Bardiani somehow.
No, I actually would love, as a fan, that I would be super interested in that. Like you guys went to Hungary for the Giro d'Italia last year.
Yeah.
And I was really curious. I think I talked to you maybe a month or so before you went. And, my personal anxiety would be going to a race and then you miss the race. It's almost like you're so close to the forest, you can't see it, that everything's happening and you're not able to actually absorb it and break it down. But I would have loved like content of you guys just like hanging out in Budapest and kind of like you're exploring like the friendship side of your work versus just the analysis. But how did you find being on the ground? Did you think it added an element to the coverage? Did you just find it to be a pain in the butt because Wi-Fi is inconsistent and hard to nail down sometimes when you're on the go?
Oh, it's a mixed feeling towards it, because on one end, I feel like when you get too close to the race, it's very difficult to keep track of everything. Because if you're actually going to the race in the bus zone and so forth, talking to riders, talking with people from the organization, talking with fans by the side of the road. There were quite a few other LRCP fans by the side of the road as well in Budapest. So that's great that you can communicate with the people that watch your content as well. That's one of the most beautiful parts of what we do. And there's the opposite side of the coin, that if you're there, you're not watching on television. So you miss a lot of stuff, like loads of stuff, to the point that we had to rewatch certain parts before we were able to actually get started with the podcast, because we need to make sure that we say everything that happened on the podcast. Then we also had like an Airbnb with the internet. Oh, I don't even want to talk about it. The internet was so terrible that we literally had to buy like SIM cards with data on it to be able to use mobile data instead of the Wi-Fi in the Airbnb that supposedly had great Wi-Fi, which it didn't. It was a mess, but the podcasts were online. It took us quite a bit to get it uploaded, but the people didn't see it, and that's the most important part.
And sorry, Andrew, you thought I was going to talk, and I did.
I did. I thought Spencer was going to talk.
You
had that look.
I know.
Spencer had that like. Well, I was watching his lips. Spencer and I have worked together a lot. We're kind of new at working with guests together, but we have a lot of fun. One of the things that jumped out at me, and one of the ideas that I'm having right now, is I think it would be really fun if we got Benji and Patrick together with us at an event in the United States and did something together. So I'll just throw that out there. I think it would be, I think that'd be interesting and a fun thing to do. And as I'm thinking about that, Benji, I'm curious, how do you think about cycling in the United States and what's going on over here? Spencer and I were just talking on a podcast yesterday. I don't know if it's out yet or not, but we were talking about the Cyclocross World Championships, and I actually would love to know if you think Wout potentially took a dive. Like, how did he blow that sprint? Number one, and number two, we talk a lot about like what's going on with gravel, what's going to happen over time. Is this a flash in the pan? Is that ever going to have a viewership at the scale that road cycling does globally? But what's your take on what's happening in America, and do you have any interest in it?
Well, first of all, I'll start off with me having limited knowledge on what happens in cycling in America in the first place. But I will say that it's really unfortunate that there's been so many organizers having trouble organizing their races in America. Like California's gone. I think, does Utah still exist?
No, that's gone too.
No. We used to have a race in my home state as well. There used to be a Tour of Missouri. It's also gone.
Crazy. And Tour de Trump back in the day.
That was a good race. Oof. Oh, yeah, the Tour de Trump. Who can forget?
Maryland Classic was a good one last year. I'd like to see more American races. I'd love to see them, but I don't know the finances behind it. I don't know the reason why they financially weren't able to set it up anymore. I remember there was some reason for it. I just don't remember what the reason was.
Well, Benji, it's primarily because, for the most part, no one cares about cycling in the United States. I mean, we care about it a lot, and there definitely, I think there's a subset of people who care about it a lot, but I just think from a marketing point of view,
well, I would push back. I think the Tour California was pretty popular. I mean, that was a big event in California. I think the main problem is they just lose money. Like, even let's say the roadsides were packed with people. they just, I mean, I think in Europe, maybe the cost of just closing the roads are, I mean, also a lot of European races lose money. I mean, how many races make money? It's like the Tour, the Giro,
Yeah.
maybe a couple classics, Flanders Classics races, but those races in Europe, they eat the loss on it because they're owned by organizers who run the races that make money. So it's just, I mean, can you imagine what it costs to run the Tour of California to close off roads across that whole state?
By the
That must
way,
have been.
as of recording this, we're a few days after what happened in Turkey when it comes to the earthquake. And I was supposed to be at the Tour of Antalya. The organizers invited me to be there. And I heard this morning, actually, that if the earthquake happened a day later, that the Tour of Antalya organization would have been doomed, that they wouldn't have been able to survive because they probably wouldn't have been able to get the refunds and so forth. So it's crazy how fragile it all is when it comes to the individual organizers, because these are the organizers that don't have the whole batch of races in there that actually need to make sure they financially survive every year to organize their races. And it's unfortunate to see it happen, of course, like what happened there. And on the other end, it's also just gives a different perspective on how fragile every small organizer has to be to get these races going.
So based on your answer, Benji, it sounds like you don't have deep knowledge about what's happening in the United States, and there aren't a lot of races that are on your radar that are interesting to you.
You'll like crits a lot, is what I always keep hearing. Like, what's up with your love?
We've got the crit guy right here. Have you seen Spencer's biceps in like 2012?
I'll share some. I'll DM you some photos, Benji.
Belgian kermesse or American crit?
I mean, Belgian kermesse is much better. I mean, that's a much better race that like actually should be embraced in the US. Crits only became popular here because it's so much easier and cheaper to close down a block. And you can make a little bit of money, because you could sell a couple ads, you could sell food, drink. So you could make money. Like Tulsa Tough makes money as an organization. So I think it's just like, it's more of a necessity than a preference.
Okay. Now, of course, in Belgian kermesse, you've got the frituur by the side of the road, which adds a bit more spice to the love of the race. But
and it's definitely handicapped this a little bit because crits it used to happen a little bit more. Like Tyler Farrar raced crits, but you can't really go from racing American criteriums to then being a professional road racer. It's just you're not. The races are way too short. You're not getting the same skills. So, my advice is if you're a young American, don't race crits. Go to Europe and race in Belgium or Holland or Spain and get out of here.
Would you say that we see the likes of a Zwift Academy, for example, doing wonders for Australia, who also have difficulties getting riders into World Tour? Would you argue that could also be a thing for Americans?
Probably. I talked to Patrick and another Australian about this, but I mean, Australians are pretty tough. There's like a grit there. If you think about why are there Australian professional cyclists? Like, it's not overly popular in Australia. They hate cyclists on the roads. It's really far from Europe. And it's almost like that distance helps them because there's only one way to make it. It's to get to Europe. I feel like in the US, there is talent. They could, Zwift Academy could be good, but Americans just have a hard time kind of making that jump in the way Australians do for reasons I'm not quite sure of.
Well, I also think that if you're a very talented young athlete in the United States, there are development systems for sports that have a much higher financial potential.
Yeah. But wouldn't you say the same thing about Australia? Like rugby, Aussie rules.
I mean, those sports don't. Yes, you can make a good living, a living that I think we all would say if you were the best at it, you're making a good living. But an elite rugby player is not making a salary on par with an NFL player, a Major League Baseball player, or an NBA player. So I think.
Would you say that there's a factor of trying to find people that could inspire a new wave of new people in other sports? As in, for example, we talk about Roglic coming from a ski jumping background. I think Kuz also has something with skiing under his belt. Like, do we need to find someone that is really bloody good, that comes from a background of a different sport, an American rower or something, that goes into cycling to like hype up the wave of new youngsters, or do we need Simmons to break through?
Well, I think
Simmons has issues, but could help. What were you going to say, Andrew?
Yeah, I would ask perhaps a slightly different question, and this is something I've been wanting to ask you, Benji, because I mean, part of what we've seen happen with sport and with content in the past couple of years, there's of course the F1 series, right, on Netflix, which has transformed interest in that sport. Now we're seeing that same production company take on other sports that are, of course, doing a Tour de France series. They also now have a tennis series. I don't know. Have you watched the tennis series that they did that's on Netflix?
I have not. I've watched a part of the F1 series, though, because I also was trying to get into F1 when I had a bit of free time in 2021. No, 2022. Didn't have the free time in 2021. But I don't know. When it comes to the Netflix series, I hope that it's good. I just have some fears. I don't know.
I do too. Yeah.
I feel like they're going to try and manipulate certain stories. I've already had I don't know if they didn't let me sign an NDA, so I'm guessing I'm allowed to tell you this. The Box to Box, I think it wasn't Box to Box themselves, but like a UK production company contacted me for if they could use one of my tweets in a TV documentary, and it was me saying that David Gaudu is basically Guillaume Martin, but without the philosophy, before the Tour de France. And I'm pretty sure that I already can guess where this was going to go if they use that. So I was like, you can hire me to say the same thing on screen and I'll do it. But using just the tweet out of context, probably not.
Yeah. I mean, I just think about when I think about how you make cycling more popular. I've always been into cycling. I've been into bikes with gears since 1988. Which is pretty early in the United States. It wasn't a very popular sport at that point in time. Spencer and I both come from the middle of the country, where I would say cycling is less popular than on the coast, and it's just generally a less popular sport in the United States. Yeah. Although from a participation point of view, it's very popular. It's just the competitive side of the sport that's not as popular. And I think it's about telling stories that people from other sports can relate to. So it's drawing them into those storylines. Yeah. And you have to surface them in a way that's accessible. That's part of what, again, Benji and I were talking about. This YouTuber, Average Rob, has a video with Remco Evenepoel, who's one of the very best cyclists in the world. He's a world champion. To date, he's been portrayed in the media as kind of like this robo, Ivan Drago type athlete. He's done some things in races that are a bit questionable. But that video, for me, showed this human side of him that was, it was pretty funny. He has a lot more personality than I've seen. And the reality is the media in the United States just doesn't cover Remco. You never see anything that shows any of his characters. So the only way you're potentially going to be interested in this guy who's a world champion and one of the very best in the game right now is if you're a very core athlete following races and all you're seeing is him in a peloton doing the thing he does as an athlete. So I think you have to couple character, high tension, high drama storylines and content off the bike to draw people in. And the Netflix series might do that, or it might not. But to me, the way forward is better storytelling.
I agree. But I feel like when it comes to the last three topics we've spoken about, next to the Netflix thing, there's also so many documentaries coming out. I think Jumbo's bringing one out, Quickstep, SD Works on the women's side. Now there's one being rumored for Mark Cavendish on Netflix as well, which could be intriguing. I feel like Netflix is going to be that way to get into the sport for people that aren't necessarily hardcore fans of the sport. And it might even trigger hardcore fans of the sport by using storylines that aren't really the reality, but could get more people into the sport, which, I don't know, it might trigger me. But if it brings more people in, I'll say hi and I'll be happy with it. But when it comes to the other documentaries, I feel like that might be more for the fans of the sport. For example, I'm actually working together with the company that is working on the Quickstep thing as one of the analysts on screen for that series. So I look forward to hopefully not being cut out of the final version of it. And
do you think
I'd say what's all right?
Is team produced stuff like, to me, what's interesting about Drive to Survive is Max Verstappen just being an asshole and like so unlikable. And the fact that him and Ricardo hated each other and that Gunther Steiner's chewing people out. But if you're team produced, you're not going to include any of the good stuff. Like, I almost wonder if, like, is this team produced stuff just, it's for fans of Quick Step and it's unusable to anyone else?
The Quick Step pillow fight.
The pillow fight has to be in. But I think there's a combination, because like the Quick Step one is made by an external company. And I spoke to Remco, I think a week ago, which is like, the show is already completely edited and so forth, and he has no clue what's in it. He hasn't seen it, has seen nothing. I've seen more of the show than Remco, which is, I won't complain. But I would say that, I don't know. I don't know what the relationship is between that production company and Quickstep. I don't know what the relationship is between the Amazon people that follow Jumbo. I have no clue. I feel like Netflix will probably have one of the views that is more the uninterrupted by the team, because based on the public knowledge, the teams didn't really have too much say on what is recorded and what is not recorded. In reality, probably at some points there were some teams that said, no, okay, let this athlete alone. He's crying in a corner, okay? Like, maybe that happened, but we don't know that. I think it's difficult to know. For me, it's more that I just want to see more people in the sport, and if a TV show about a team, which is from a fan point of view, or whether it's from a beginner to the sport point of view, or whether it's from a hardcore fan point of view, with some like things like the Movistar show, where it actually got into the bad things about the stuff behind the scene as well. As long as it gets people into the sport, I'm happy.
Yeah, the Movistar documentary is another one, or docuseries Spencer and I have talked about quite a bit. I really enjoyed it, and also it was so emo and such a downer series. I mean, if you're a hardcore cycling fan, you definitely enjoyed the complexity and the dynamics. But I mean, even the music they chose, it was such a downer. But I'm curious. Go ahead, Benji.
I'd also say that I think we also underestimate what kind of added pressure that it gives to athletes behind the team if those TV shows are being recorded. Like at Quickstep and Jumbo and so forth, it's probably somewhat by the teams selected of what parts go into the thing. I'm not certain about that. I'm just guessing. But when it comes to Movistar, I feel like a lot of the bad stuff was shown as well, to the point that I wonder if that mentally affected some of the riders. If there were riders that were like, with like pressure up to their elbows because of the factor that everything they do wrong will be hyper focused on in a TV show and so forth. That is viewed by many in the sport. Now, I also want to just jump back to what you said about Remco earlier. I actually met Remco for the first time as a part of working on that Quickstep thing. And I can only say that he was definitely super friendly. And like, I was there just prepping my stuff that I needed to say on the documentary and so forth. But Alaphilippe was the kind of person that directly said hi to every single person in the room. Remco took an hour of his time to just sit there and talk with me about stuff throughout the season and so forth. So this was 2 days after he got married or something. So it's kind of crazy that he was there and not on like a honeymoon. Well, unless he wanted to do it with me. I won't complain. But
he couldn't miss the memes, like, the world-class memes before that.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like
of you carrying Remco like a baby.
Jesus Christ. The media talks about riders in a certain way, and like, let's be honest about it. Media tries to get clicks with certain riders, what they do and so forth. It's the same on YouTube and so forth. It's everywhere. But in reality, we got to remember that these riders are humans as well, and probably not exactly the same as the way they are portrayed on the internet. I do think that certain riders have had an evolution throughout it. For example, with Remco, I think that he changed a few ways throughout the last couple of years. Maybe that's media training. Maybe that's him just being more mature over the years. You don't know that. But yeah, I don't know. I have no clue where I was going with that point, but I'll just end it there.
Benji, what about pro cyclists who are also YouTubers? For example, I've gotten into Harry Sweeney's YouTube channel, who's an Australian, rides for Lotto. I really wasn't familiar with Harry before I stumbled across his YouTube content. He's really into cooking, and I find his content to be quite interesting, and it just shows this slice of life behind the scenes of, hey, this is what it's like to be a pro cyclist. And he's just a guy, I'm assuming, with I mean, maybe he has a DSLR, but whatever. He's got a really simple setup. He makes relatively simple videos. I find them to be compelling. I don't think enough of that content's getting in front of the average person who might have interest in the sport. But who else do you think on the YouTube side is doing interesting content?
I'll be honest, I look at a limited amount of pro cyclists' YouTube channels. That being said, I know Harry Sweeney. I watched a video of him very recently, last week or something, talking about like fueling and so forth for rides, which was really interesting. And I love to see a bit of a behind the scenes when it comes to stuff like that. There's also like Impy is doing a lot on YouTube right now. I love to see that because there's also the factor that some of these cyclists are moving towards the latter part of their career. So they need to start thinking about what comes after. I need to start thinking about, can I actually make like a YouTube channel that fuels my income for the next couple of years so that I don't necessarily need to jump into a DS role instantly, or that I don't need to become a baker or something after my cycling career, whatever the dreams are of these cyclists. I like it because it's obviously great. The more content for people to watch, the better it is for the sport, in my opinion. I would also say that I would love to collaborate with like a pro cyclist that has a YouTube channel. For example, like me, a guy that's still relatively overweight, an amateur dude like myself versus a pro in like a little video to see what the differences are, how crazy the differences are. Would be a funny video. I'd love to do that. It's just very difficult to kind of connect with those riders from my experience personally.
Would you ever go to like a camp? Like just go to like a January training camp and like Benji's out on the rides? Or would you think that's like uncomfortably close to the subject that you're talking about during the year?
I don't mind doing that, but I feel like I might not be at that level yet to be able to get the most out of that. It's like I'm just starting with my journey of from a shit cyclist to a not so shit cyclist. And maybe next year I might be at a level where I'm like comfortable of riding in the wheel of a professional for like 3 minutes and don't die. That kind of thing. Because I also want to do stuff that I know I'm capable of doing. And one of the things that's on my list for this year is ride with a pro. But I won't be able to stay in a wheel of a professional for more than 5 minutes if they're riding decent watts. Let's be honest about it. So if I want to make longer form content out of that, it needs to be in a later part of my own fitness journey because I'm not there yet.
Just do the episode in Holland. No climbing.
Yeah, no climbing. Benji, that's making me think of another YouTuber. I don't know his last name, but his YouTube handle is Tristan Takes Video. Are you familiar with him?
I'm not.
Okay, so he's also an Australian, I believe, and he lives in Andorra. And he goes and does training rides, lots of behind the scenes footage with pros. And he also did I don't know what it's called, but there's a bike packing race in the Atlas Mountains that's 1,000 miles. So I'm watching his documentary about that right now, which is excellent. So that's, potentially one to check out. You talked about your weight loss journey. You talked about getting into cycling. What have you learned from this period of time when you've been on this journey, and what have you found works for you and keeps you motivated and that you're enjoying that you're doing?
I think the biggest thing is that you don't need to expect instant gains either. It needs to be a gradual mindset of like, okay, I'm here for the trend. I'm not here for in 1 week I want to have lost 20 kilos. That's impossible, eh? Let's be honest about it. It's more of in a year I want to have lost X amount of kilos, and whether that goes up for a bit this month and goes down more next month, I won't be disappointed if it goes up this month, for example, because I've learned over the last year that I'm in control of it. So the control is somewhat what I learned over my own weight, and the factor that you always have to keep the long-term mindset in your head. And next to that, what have I learned from my personal journey? I think I'm currently learning a lot when it comes to the cycling side of things. Like I'm trying to create my own like Zwift workouts. Z2 rides aren't that hard to make. Like it's the same bloody watts every single second of that ride. But when I'm going into like intervals and so forth, how many minutes should I do an interval to get better at my 10-minute power, for example, that kind of stuff. I'm kind of looking into that at the moment to try and see how I can get better in certain ways and what the best ways to do that are. And I think I'm learning a lot when it comes to what it takes to be a professional cyclist as well, because I'm just trying to be a decent cyclist, like an not even an average one, like just under average. I'm trying to be dad. These guys are riding what's like crazy on these climbs. Like, I can't imagine what a lifestyle it requires to get to that level.
That's interesting because there's not. I'm trying to imagine like an American NFL content content creator being like trying to live like an NFL football player. It's like in cycling, it's easy for me to kind of understand like the watts they're doing. But if we think about mainstream sports, there's not many like British soccer writers who are like, and I lived like a Premier League footballer for 12 months. It must give you a kind of a unique insight that you didn't have before.
Yeah, I think so as well. And it's also not just the insight, but a feeling of more groundedness, and it helps maybe with staying a bit more humble as the podcast grows and so forth, and realizing that throughout the years that you're never going to know everything. I'm never going to know everything when it comes to the stuff I say on the podcast, and writers can point it out. People that watch the podcast can point it out. I'm never going to consider myself before I start a podcast to be the all-knowing person, and it helps with keeping myself at that. And I think that's also important, staying as humble as I was like before I started this podcast, if that makes sense, together with Patrick.
Before you get your world tour contract.
well, pro team level, maybe.
Pro team.
Starting in the second division.
World team.
You said something to me last year. I think about it all the time. You're like, I can say something. It's not the law. Because people can get so upset with things you say about a race or takes you might have. It's like, it's not legally binding. I can say whatever I want, and you might be able to disagree with it. But it's just a great philosophy I find myself thinking about all the time.
That's the beauty, yeah? Because like, it would be really boring if everything I said on the podcast was correct, because then everybody else would also know that it was correct, and then you have no discussion. It's good that I sometimes say something stupid by accident, and that people can point it out, because then I get to learn from that, and sometimes other people get to learn from what I say. So it's a good fun, and it also drives discussion within the community, because one of the best things about doing a podcast is that the people that listen to the podcast, that watch the podcast, can also communicate with you and have a two-way communication, whether it's in the comments, whether it's in DMs on Instagram or Twitter, whatever. I try to respond too much, but it's getting quite difficult recently. But it's fun to hear other people's perspectives on stuff I say.
And I just have so last year, it's kind of an amazing story. You go from you're a child playing Pro Cycling Manager, be like, I don't even know if there is an analog in the US where someone just played Madden and then they ran an NFL team. But you went from playing Pro Cycling Manager, and then you were hired last year to be kind of a strategic mastermind behind Jumbo-Visma's season. Let's go with it.
Okay.
But and they had
It's not the law.
They had great success. That must have been in some ways fulfilling for you. And then you made it public maybe a month ago that you decided to not renew your contract with Jumbo, and instead you just wanted to focus on content creation. And I think specifically, correct me if I'm wrong, but you writing content, out in the world, kind of your own fitness journey. I mean, can you talk about like what was that like to work for Jumbo, and then what was that like to leave it, and to why you're doing it? Why is it so much more fulfilling to create content, for
when it comes to
just a few?
When it comes to the Jumbo thing, I'd say that it was in like February and so forth, 2022, where I got like the call from Meren Zeeman. He was interested in someone doing video analysis for Jumbo-Visma, and he knew that I knew shit about cycling and that I could also edit videos. And I realized that Patrick was probably equally as good, if not better, in certain areas for that than myself. So we teamed up to do that as a consequence, obviously with a neutrality clause in the contract to make sure that we don't. We need to remain honest on the podcast and so forth without saying anything pro Jumbo-Visma necessarily as a consequence of working with them, if that makes sense. Like, we're talking the same stories as we did before, and they were okay with that. So we kept on forward with that, and it was a learning experience, but I don't know, it's weird. I kind of learned throughout that period that while it was successful, like we did for the Classics and the Tour de France, and there were some successes as a consequence of some work we did for Jumbo-Visma, I would say that I kind of started realizing I could use this time to make content for more people than just a few people behind the cycling team. And I enjoy that idea more, because I feel like there's an opportunity cost when it comes to my own content. And even when it comes to the podcast, even some time that could be spent on that by working with teams on other stuff. And that's not just working with teams, like other stuff that's not necessarily creating extra content for viewers of podcast or my own channel.
And did you find just the work with Yumbo? I mean, it's kind of a funny thing. I've been thinking about this myself. Like financially, it's almost better to make content for the fewest people possible. Like, if you have a job, basically as an analyst for one, you work at a hedge fund. You're a hedge fund analyst, and that's a well-paid job. Like the more people you then start to try to talk to, the harder and harder the economics become. But it can be less fulfilling. If you're just creating content for Yumbo, maybe that's not as nice as you say, because there's not people enjoying that, and it's just the team.
I can already say that the finances that I've secured for my personal content on my own channel in 2023 will be higher than any work I've done for a cycling team in 2022. So I think there's some overrating in that regard. I think for me, I didn't do it for the money. I did it because I wanted to add a small thing on my CV that said, oh, this guy worked for Jumbo-Visma for a year, and whatever they did throughout that year is a bonus. But video analysis, tactical consultancy throughout the year. It started at video analysis, but it grew more into tactical consultancy throughout the year. I think Patrick spoke about it already on this podcast a few months or weeks ago. I can't remember when he came on this podcast. Yeah, just in general, I think there's more potential with my own content, more lasting potential than if I would have continued doing this for another year, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and Benji, sorry, go ahead, Spencer.
I was just going to say that makes sense, and then you can go ahead, Andrew.
Thank you, Spencer. So Benji, something that you talked about when you were on Spencer's podcast about that career transition, you talked about it a bit today, is that you wanted to have more control over your time so you could focus on your health and things that were truly important, and you could make the content that you were most passionate about, and where you saw really the highest financial potential as well. As you have been on this path, both with your business and with your personal life and health, how has your time management been? And as you add more things, do you continue to have the control over your time that you wanted to have at the start of this journey? Because I hear you talking about, wow, you've got a lot of stuff going on. It's really high potential. And as I think all three of us know, and you've talked about, when opportunity knocks, sometimes you just have to put your head down and grind. So how are you continuing to keep balance and stay focused on your health in the midst of this?
I'll be honest, the last month I've been really stressed about this, because I've been really stressed about getting able to release the content on my personal channel next to what happens on the podcast, because the podcast is the main focus. Then my own side content next to that, my own content next to that is what I try and focus on for the rest of my time. And that content includes my own personal training, which kind of helps if you're getting paid to ride my bike. That's useful. But I would say that I've also just recently had a lot of stress when it comes to being able to upload my videos in time, because I feel like uploading every 2 weeks is a bit not much on my channel now. And I want to try and evolve that into more towards the end of the year. But I also sometimes just need to step back. I need to look at the bigger picture and then look at what I've been able to do in the last year and what I'm currently doing. And then I'm like, it's understandable that I can't upload more than once in 2 weeks at the moment, which it sucks. I'd love to upload much more than that. I'd love for people to have more content than that, but it's just not happening right now. So I guess I just have to accept it and try and better it over time. And the supposed step is I can't technically afford an editor from this point onwards for my personal content. But the issue is I don't like giving away creative control on like the real life videos. On the pro cycling manager videos, fine, you can have it. Whoever wants it can edit those videos. Like they can cut it in pieces and put small transitions into it and then make sure that it's kind of snappy, just similar that it was before. But I'm willing to give some creative control to the editor as well. But when it comes to my personal in real life content, I want it the way I want it. And it's very difficult because I feel like I'd be spending a lot of time explaining how I want it and not being happy about it more than the time for editing it would be.
Yeah, this is something Andrew and I talked about when we first met, actually. Is it more work to give your work to someone else to edit than just doing it yourself? It's a hard calculation to make. And Benji, I just, Andrew wants to do an event with you and Lanterne or Patrick in the US. I would love to do one in Europe, specifically the UK. I just want to give you a little bit of time here to tell us why the UK is such a great country and why you enjoy splitting your time there between Belgium and the UK.
Well, my girlfriend lives here, so that's an easy solution. That's an easy reason that I spend my time here a lot of the time. But I also don't live here officially yet. That is something that we'll try and work through in the future to make that happen. I think that's likely going to be the case, that I need to get the admin ready so I can actually live here full time or something. But that's not the case yet. Why am I going to the UK when everybody's leaving the UK? I don't know. It's worth it, I'm guessing, from my perspective. For other people, it might have been worth leaving. Now, I might have tweeted a few times that the food is shit out here. That's mainly to trigger people because it works, and that's always enjoyable. But I can't complain. My girlfriend cooks amazing food, and that's the most important part.
It does get dark at like 3:30. Why are they on a different time zone? Yeah, it's so weird.
There's so many things about it. Like, it gets dark really early. They call sandwiches something completely different than in Flanders. I'm not okay with it. Belgian fries are 10 times better than the chips they have over here. Tea is basically flavored water. There's so much I can talk. Beans on toast. Who invented that? That should be illegal. Human torture that.
These are all solid points. But on a more serious note, do you find that maybe your money, just as, let's say you're a content creator, you're going to make about the same money wherever you live. It's a unique part of your job. Do you find that like maybe the quality of life for the same income is higher in northwestern mainland Europe than in the UK? Or have you noticed maybe there's no difference at all?
I don't know yet. My life is expensive in both areas, I feel like a lot of people are struggling in both areas, whether it's Belgium or the UK. And that the crisis of like the amount of money people need to spend for the basic necessities in life is outrageous. I'm fortunate to be in a situation where it doesn't hit me as hard as the average people, I would say, in these countries. But I don't know. Is there a big difference between the two? I wouldn't necessarily say so. Like, I could go to a different country, like, I don't know, and probably pay less taxes than I do in Belgium right now, because that hurts a lot. Like, oof, ouch. But hey, I'm okay with it, and it's not the most important part in life. Money. It's more the experiences that you have is more important, if that makes sense.
Is that that's a very healthy and good view you have. Is it a trend in the YouTube community to move to tax havens like Andorra or Monaco?
I don't know if it's a trend. I think some people do it. I think some people do it for other reasons than just, like, Patrick's main reason that he moved to Andorra is because the dude was recording cycling podcasts at 3 a.m. or something every single night when he was living in Australia. So he needed to go to Europe. And if you have the choice, why not select a region that is beneficial in other areas as well? I wouldn't have to think 20 times about that. But when it comes to me personally, I'm living in Europe. Time zone's not an issue. Girlfriend lives in the UK. I don't necessarily... I value the being around the people that I love more than getting a bit more, benefit in that sense.
I think the lesson learned here is sometimes you'll just have to eat beans on toast to get what you want.
It's beautiful. That's a beautiful philosophy.
Well, Benji, it's been awesome to have you here. We could go on for hours, and in fact, it would be great to probably do a part two, because I know there's so many cycling specific things that it would be great to cover in a part two. But thanks for being here today. Thanks for all the cool content that you make, and thanks for what you shared. And if people want to find you, where do you send them? Where would you like them to go?
I'd say just hop on to Twitter, Benji Naesen, my name, or YouTube. You'll find me on both of those, and Instagram as well. But let's be honest, I'm most active on Twitter, and everything I do shows up on Twitter anyway. So that's probably the the main area where you can find all of my content kind of centralized.
Awesome. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for talking to us.
This is Andrew Vance. Thank you for listening to Choose the Hard Way. Sharing is caring. So if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, hit 5 stars wherever you listen, leave a positive review, and share it with a friend. Sign up for the newsletter at choosethehardway.com to get the story behind these stories, episode updates, and more.